Hey guys, it's Jane. I'm here for a Friday-ish reads on a Sunday afternoon. Let's see how we go. I finished 3 things this week. I finished David Shafer's Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. This was a really enjoyable techno thriller conspiracy story. It basically follows 3 30-something. She's a woman who works for an NGO presently in Myanmar, and 2 guys who were at uni together and were friends then and have subsequently fallen out. One of them is a trust fund kid who has become quite mentally unwell and now works in childcare. He was quite brilliant, but things are a bit random inside his brain. And his other friend was not a trust fund kid, came up a bit poorer, but is now a self-help guru and a spiraling out of control alcoholic. We have chapters from each of their point of views, and initially they're all quite separate, and as the story progresses they get pulled together, and it all starts because our NGO worker sees something that she is not supposed to see near the Burma-China border, and asks a few inconvenient questions, and suddenly her life is out of control because shadowy powers have decided to stamp on her. And it's not going to be interesting to anybody who doesn't get a little bit of a thrill from the whole, shadowy conspiracy behind, the powers that be and who is reading our emails and that sort of thing. It's beautifully written. The one thing I will say, I'm very glad that I read a couple of reviews before I read it, and they all mention the fact that it has a very abrupt ending. We get to a certain point where everything comes to a kind of climax, and that's when the book stops. So if that's for people who know that is just a deal breaker, then don't pick it up. But if you're somebody who doesn't mind a bit of an open-ended ending, I would recommend having a look at Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. The other one novel that I finished this week was Sovereign by C.J. Sansom. This is the 3rd in the Matthew Shardlake series, which is set in Tudor times in England. Shardlake is a lawyer and he gets caught up in, mostly against his better judgment, in mysteries. And this installment is no different. His patron, Thomas Cromwell, was actually executed at the end of the 2nd book. So we're in quite a different world now in this 3rd book. It's set several years later than the 2nd book. He gets called upon by the now Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, and he gets given a task, partly as a lawyer and man of affairs, and partly as a somewhat known quantity who can get things done, to take part in one of the King's royal progresses. It's King Henry VIII. He's during this story, he's up to his 5th wife, and from the children's rhyme, for any of you remember it, it's divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. So number 5 is not a pretty story, and that is what we get in this book. So he's had some sort of legal dealings that he has to take part in this northern progress. So the king is with thousands of courtiers, is travelling north, and Shardlake is following in his train to do a little bit of work, but he gets caught up in there is a conspiracy going on. He uncovers a murder fairly early on. And it's not just a random murder, it's a falling out between conspirators, it turns out. And yes, things go from bad to worse from Matthew Shardlake in this story. At one point he's actually thrown in the tower, and that section of the book is really, really creepy. If it wasn't for the fact that I knew that there were several more volumes of the story to come, I don't know that I quite would have made it through that part, because it's really horrible. It's not just getting sent to prison, it's getting sent to the torture chamber, and yeah, nobody wants that. But yeah, no, these are really well written. King Henry VIII is, we actually meet him in person briefly in the story, and he is not an attractive character the way he's drawn. So as I said on my Twitter, this is one I would recommend for lovers of historical mysteries and also people who deep down have a suspicion that Henry might in fact be the devil. So, you know, I know that there's always a sprinkling of people out there who think that. This is a book for you. The third thing that I finished this week, I would have reached over and grabbed, but my 9-year-old has. It's the 7th volume of Adventure Time. This is a really great trade. It starts with the issue that was their 30th issue, and that one was a really fun read. It's a zine. It's Marcel's zine, and so Marceline has got friends who like Adventure Time characters have drawn comic strips about themselves or other people, and so that issue 30 was a really fun issue, and that's part of this bind up. So you get a whole bunch of different art styles and things that are written from the perspective of different characters in the Adventure Time world. So yeah, that was fun. The two things that I've started that I'm currently in progress of reading, this is one, The Adventures of Dr McNinja. This is a giggle fest. Let me just read what this says here on the cover for you in case you can't resolve it. I have no idea what my gorilla receptionist is saying, but I do know that this boy has Paul Bunyan's disease, and if I don't operate right now, he'll transform into a giant lumberjack. This is the kind of tension that we find in Dr. McNinja. There are lots of very funny jokes in this, like seriously giggle material. There's also lots of, it's relatively comic strip violence, but it is family friendly. There's actually a number of jokes on that score where, you know, somebody starts swearing and there's something written over the speech bubble with somebody else saying, he said a bad word. And yeah, so it's a fun one. It's actually a print up of a webcomic. So if you can't get a hold of it in paper, you can actually go to drmcninja.com, and I think pretty much all of the stories are available free online. So I'm really enjoying this. The other thing that I'm reading is Stephen Erikson's Deadhouse Gates, which is the second of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I read the first one, Gardens of the Moon, in January last year, and I bought the second one fully intending that I would continue, but on reflection realised I needed a bit of a break for my brain. So anyway, it's January again, and I'm back to reading volume 2. At this rate, I will still be reading this series when I'm old and grey and have grandchildren on my knee. But that's all right. That's okay. We can do that too. This is a really big week for me. It's Australia Day on Tuesday, which is a public holiday. It's Australia's national sort of celebration day or commiseration day, depending on which side of a particular political divide you stand on. And then on Friday, it's the first day the kids are back at school, and my younger son is actually starting school for the first time this Friday. So I'm planning on being a blubbering mess this coming Friday. I'm not sure quite when I'm going to have a chance to film again, but not too distant future. We're going to be back to the proper year and Friday reads on Fridays and all that sort of stuff. But for right now, I'm not 100% certain when I'm going to film again. But I hope you're all well, and I'd love to hear what you guys are reading, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!